Let's discuss all of this with Erol Morkoc, who's from the group Republicans Overseas. This morning he's actually speaking to us from California, so much appreciated, Erol. Good morning.
Yeah, good morning. Thank you for having me.
And Matt Gill is with us as well, who is a defamation lawyer at the non-profit organisation, the Good Law Project. Morning to you, Matt.
Morning.
I'll start with you, if I may. If you were going to be on one legal team or the other, which one would you rather be on if you wanted to win?
Cool, good question. I think you probably would want to be on Trump's side. I mean, ultimately, the BBC have made some mistakes, and they've admitted that the editing could have been better and that it was misleading. But on the other side, you heard there, that you've got these amendment rights in the US that really do protect free speech. Trump wouldn't be able to bring a legal claim here because he's out of time. In the UK, you have to bring a claim within 1 year, whereas in Florida, where I understand his lawyer is based, you've got 2 years. But those amendment rights are going to be challenging for Trump to overcome.
Do you think he's going to go through with it, Erol?
I do think so, and I think it's part of the broader, idea that the fake news media is literally concocting the news according to his purview and the way a lot of his supporters see it. And in this case, either they're ignorant or malicious, and we do not believe they're ignorant. It's not quite so easy to splice clips accidentally. There's a directed narrative being pushed, a curated image, and that's something that they seem to be caught dead to rights to. So I think it's the president's MO to press. He's already won with ABC, with NBC, and I think a couple other major broadcasters in the U.S. And like the other gentleman said, wouldn't be able to do it in the U.K., but in the U.S., I think he will press ahead, and probably they'll settle for something far less than $1 billion.
Well, yeah, we'll get onto the money in a moment, but also I'm looking at some of the lawsuits that have been taken either by Donald Trump against media organisations or vice versa, by media organisations against him in 2025. And they are the highest numbers ever for him to be involved in any legal cases with media outlets. He is going to war, but at the same time, media organisations are fighting back.
Yeah, they are fighting back, but particularly in America, if you don't want to be on the wrong side of the president, if you're a media organisation whose main business is in America, then being on the wrong side of the president is not a good look, and that's a big motivation for some of these media organisations to settle their claims. We're in a slightly different position here, right? The BBC, sure, it does broadcast some, news channels and so on in America, but nowhere near to the extent that clearly they do in the UK. It's not quite known at the moment to what extent this Panorama episode was in fact broadcast in America. If it was broadcast, it's likely that it wasn't watched by a huge number of people because there's plenty of their own Trump-based coverage over there. That's going to really limit Trump's ability to bring to get $1 billion, for example, because we can't imagine that it will have been seen by a huge number of people in the US.
And other companies that we talked about who have settled, the BBC is different because it's licence fee payers' money. So settling with Donald Trump when it's the licence fee payers that will have to fork out is not a great look.
That's absolutely right. I mean, the BBC wouldn't survive if it had to pay Trump $1 billion. I think that's pretty clear. But there's also politics at play here, right? And Keir Starmer seems to have a pretty good relationship with Donald Trump, and no doubt. If this were to escalate and to continue to escalate beyond the end of this week, then there will be some political discussions between the UK and the US governments about this dispute and how it might be resolved in a way that suits both sides.
Well, that's my next question for Erol. I mean, does a conversation with Keir Starmer sort this out?
I think possibly, but only if there's going to be some, I think, extraordinary offer that would deter President Trump from following this path. Right now, I think the only thing possible is Keir Starmer can back channel with BBC executives, whoever might be left there, and come up with a reasonable offer and go and make that offer. And then maybe he can back that offer up, as it is a state-funded program and he is the prime minister. Perhaps he could lean on a easy, quick settlement. And I think that's the best he can do. But he doesn't want to throw all his political capital behind the BBC, which has has directly slandered President Trump, who he does seem to have a pretty good working relationship and doesn't want to risk that.
I mean, it's interesting, though, that you say that. I wonder, do you accept, Errol, that, and do you think many Republicans accept, or MAGA Republicans particularly, the statement by the former head of news of the BBC and the Director General that mistakes were made, but that the BBC is not institutionally biased? Do you believe that?
I do not believe that. My experience with the BBC over the last 6 years in programming has definitely revealed to me a certain slant. That doesn't mean that I haven't been treated fairly or that the Republicans don't have a voice, but it certainly is something that's maybe a subtext or something that's picked up, and it's certainly how MAGA Republicans feel and how Republicans feel probably across the board, I would say.
But, I mean, with respect, that is a feeling. Do you have evidence for it?
The evidence is going to be, beyond the obvious current topic
That's
we're
why
bringing
we're
up.
talking about, yeah.
but the evidence is going to be, I think, it's not something that I can point to directly. It's going to be the way that people feel. I'll say the one thing the BBC has going for them is that people on the left and the right both feel they're skewed the wrong way. So that tells me the BBC is actually pretty impartial personally. But still, I feel that institutionally it's against the Donald Trump side of the U.S. political parties.
Of course. And just to reiterate, the chairman as well, who is still with the BBC, Samir Shah, is saying the BBC is absolutely not systemically biased. Interestingly, Matt, Caroline Levitt, Donald Trump's press secretary, though, can come out after this story broke and say things like the BBC is 100% fake news and a propaganda machine, and presumably get away with it.
Those kind of comments are unlikely to have much of an impact on the BBC. You know, people fling those kind of remarks around all the time. But as you say, as Errol says, those kind of accusations of bias are thrown often from the left and from the right, and on various sides of different debates. So I tend to think that. This is water off a duck's back, really. The BBC will always be criticised by someone for not being impartial on one issue or another.
Thank you both very much indeed for being with us on the programme. Good to have you. Erol Morkoc, who is from Republicans Overseas, and Matt Gill, a defamation lawyer at the Good Law Project.
Let's get a